Uh, hey, what's going on, guys? It's bit by bit here. I haven't really made any videos yet today, so I thought I'd do a retrospective, and it's something I've always wanted to try. Well, not always. I mean, since last Sunday, but something I wanted to try. And today, we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Entertainment System. The Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES, was one of the biggest pioneers in video games of all time, probably more than the Atari. It is one of the first consoles to use the D-pad and created some of the greatest games of all time. For Legend of Zelda, which had also had a release on one of the Game & Watches, but hadn't really been in a game like this before. Metroid, which went on to create one of the greatest video game sequels of all time. Metroid! Kid Icarus, Ice Climber, Metal Gear, and my all-time favorite, Nintendo character, Man! Yeah, Mega Man. Awesome. It's also gone on to create and popularize some peripherals and technology. For example, it popularized the D-pad and added more than one "I'm looking at you, Atari." It also popularized the now famous and iconic looking Nintendo Zap, which would go on to define how a light gun should be made. I will say that the phaser for Sega's Master System also looked pretty awesome. It also experimented with motion controls, albeit not very successful, but still pretty cool looking. The NES itself came with the system, one or two controllers depending on which type you bought. It's also notable to say that the Famicom, or the Japanese version, which was the family computer, had a microphone that you could speak into for some games. The aforementioned Light and in Duck Hunt and Super Mario Bros. NES. Once again, here's exactly what you get when pulling out the box. The light gun, two controllers, and the game, and the console itself. The console itself was an 8-bit console, once again with many revolutionary games. It also popularized many of the games we have today, including Super Mario Bros. Yes, this was the first one to actually feature Super in the title. Just amazing, right? It's gone on to probably make the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and N64 what it is today because of how popular this game was. It has also caused some of the most talked about games in history, including Mega Man 2, my favorite game from the NES era, which includes many memorable boss battles. The NES is great for bringing the video game industry back out of the ashes after, well, we don't like to speak its name. Oh dear God, it's too horrible. No! E.T. just sits there with that little smirk on his face, knowing you brought down the whole industry. But the way it brought it back wasn't something that any regular console could do. You see, back at the time, video games were thought of as bad, what bad kids played. You know, sort of like reading comics, sort of how reading comic books were in the 40s and 50s. But of course, Nintendo, with their infinite wisdom, figured out a way to get past this. See, what if parents thought of it as a toy and not as a video game? Well, there you go. Making peripherals to make it a toy? There you go. Robotic Operating Buddy. Here's one of the peripherals that made it look like a toy. They could give this out and say, "Hey parents, this is not a video game system. This is a toy. Look, it comes with a robot." Although it could play only 2 games, it was pretty freaking awesome. And you gotta say, your own personal robot to play video games with you is pretty crazy cool. And I gotta say, it's one of my most favorite peripherals for any video game system of all time. So without the NES, kids of today wouldn't have been able to play like the kids of yesterday with their Ataris. You gotta think about the graphics on this thing. Alright, so you kept walking through the store. You had an Atari, what looked like this, which was just basically blocks. Or you had a game that looked like this. I don't know about you guys, but I'd choose this one. Out of Nintendo's infinite wisdom, well, sometimes infinite wisdom, for many the NES is considered the greatest console of all time, and I can see how people can say that. It definitely pioneered video gaming, saved it, and all around made it a better industry. Nintendo, thank you for this great console, thank you for saving the industry, and thank you for a lot of things, except for this. Nintendo, I just want you to know, I still don't believe this ever happened. I just want you people to go on! I still don't believe it. Oh, the torture!